and my job is to talk to students about agriculture and what agriculture is, and it's the food, fiber, and fuel that feeds all of us and all of the products that we use. And even if we don't live on a farm, agriculture is important to us because it's all the things that we use, and so we're becoming generations removed from the farm, but it's important that we know where our food comes from. And so today I'm with Jason Russell at his farm by Monticello, and we are going to look at sheep today in lambing season, and he's going to tell us all about the process of lambing and how he takes care of the sheep and what they eat and what the lambs are, how they grow and the life cycle of a lamb and things like that. So I'm going to switch this around and turn it to Jason.
Hello everyone, I'm Jason Russell and I'm a 6th generation farmer. That means that my family has farmed here for 6 generations, and we raise hogs, corn, soybeans. I even have a few chickpeas for making hummus, and sheep. And we're going to talk about sheep today and the different things that sheep are used for. Sheep are a desert animal, kind of like a goat, but they're well adapted to Iowa. They like to mainly eat grass, but when they're milking and raising their young, I give them a little bit of grain to help boost their energy and keep their body condition up. It's just something kind of like humans do the same thing. When you're milking or nursing a baby, you need to eat to make sure that you don't run yourself down. We started lambing here about a month ago. It was actually the 1st of April, not quite a month ago, about 3 weeks. And these sheep, some of them are young, some of them are old, some of them are just a year old or a year and a half and having their first babies, and they're called ewe lambs. So a female sheep is called a ewe. A ewe lamb is a ewe that has had her first babies. So there's some older ones in here. They kind of look different and they have a gray hair on their face. It's just kind of the way they age. Sheep take about 5 months to have a baby grow inside them, or their gestation period. And they mainly eat grass in the summertime, so they do a great job of grazing in small areas. It takes about 6 sheep to equal 1 cow, so if you don't have a real big area that might support a cow or 2 cows, you can use any number of sheep to do a perfect job of not overgrazing your grass. Most sheep have 2 babies is the most common number. Some have 1, some have 3, and on a rare occasion, sheep will even have 4 babies. So sheep are a food and fiber animal, so their wool is very, very warm and durable. A lot of people will make clothes out of wool. And we're actually going to shear these sheep next week, which basically take a big fancy clippers that's made to get through that thick stuff and cut all the wool off, and it's so thick it'll actually stay in what's called a fleece. And I don't know if any of you have a fleece sweater, but it feels exactly like that, like a Patagonia sweater almost. So the lambs are very, very neat to feel. We shear the sheep for 2 reasons. One is to get the wool off of them so they can stay cool, and then the wool can be used for clothing. And the other reason is to keep things like bugs and worms and stuff from making a nest in their wool and making them sick. We generally try to shear the sheep every year about the same time, this time of year when it's getting warmer out and they don't need the coat to keep them warm. Most of the time, through the winter, they stay in the shed area here, and then when they have lambs, they'll usually come in here and have their lambs out of the wind until they're up and going, because it just takes them some time to get to where they're up and drinking and dried off and doing well. We can walk over and look at some lambs and see some of them are just kind of taking a nap and hanging out. If you look in their ears, they've got tags with a number, and that number is the same number as their mom had. So we do that so we can keep them together as a group. If we split them up and take them to pastures, we want to make sure the babies go with the right moms. That way they're still a family and they won't get confused and run out of something to eat. So sheep are a little different than cows. They have 2 teats on them instead of 4, and I'm not sure why, because cows usually have 1 baby and they have 4 teats, but lambs can have 4 babies and have 2 teats. It's kind of funny how that works sometimes.
Can you explain what a teat is?
Yep, so the teats are on the udder right here on the back of the ewe. I don't know if you can see them. They're kind of, if we see the front, if you look at this one over here, you can see it, Morgan. That's what the lambs will suck on. If we look around, we can probably see one that's getting milk from his mom. That one's trying to. So, and the lambs will be on the mothers for about 2 months, and then they'll go on a grain and hay diet, and we'll feed them up to 90 to 100 pounds, and then we'll take those down to the Kelowna sale barn and sell them. Yeah, right by the silo you can see one drinking from his mom underneath there. So they're pretty cute little animals. They like to play and climb on stuff and jump and run, and they have a good time. Morgan, are there any other questions? Anything I need to talk about?
No questions yet, but if we want to go over and look at the corn, do you want to explain
Yep.
what they're eating and then maybe the hay?
Yep. So these sheep, if you look over there, you can see they were just eating. That's corn from the field that we combined last fall and we had in the bin. And when the lambs get a little bit bigger, we'll put them on a ground corn mixture, just so the mothers can produce more milk, have even more energy, and grow the lambs up. You don't want to feed them too much right now, because the lambs will actually get sick because the milk is too rich. So over here, we've got some hay that we actually made about almost a year ago from some grass hay fields that we have. And we just make a big round bale in the field and then put it in this ring so they can get what they want.
What breed of sheep do you raise, they're asking?
So the breed that we have here is Suffolk, with the black head, a woolless tummy, and a white fleece. So Suffolk is an old breed, but I'm pretty sure that it's a hybrid. There's a lot of breeds out there, cattle too, that it's 2 different original breeds, but now it's a mainstream breed. We can go over and actually look at the rams, the fathers of all these.
That's my next question.
Yep.
Do male and female sheep look different?
Yes. So we've got them all right here. The females have an udder to feed their lambs, so you can see that on the back, and they're quite a bit smaller. They're not nearly as aggressive as the rams are. Sometimes rams can be a little bit temperamental, like they'll mess with you, like they like to hit you in the butt. I've got 3 of the Suffolk rams and 1 that is half Suffolk, half border Leicester, and it was just kind of an experiment to see what the lambs were going to look like. And some of the lambs we have here have a white fleece with black speckles, and those are offspring of that crossbred ram. Just like people, they're all a little bit different, and their offspring often look a lot like their parents. Most of the black lambs you see walking around here will turn white when they get older. It's just when they're young, that wool is just a real dark color. And if you look right there, Morgan, there's 2 at the same time drinking. That mom had 2 lambs. And the lamb on this side, you can see in the middle of his back, there's a little bit of white starting to show already. He's just getting old enough that it's showing. We're actually going to dock the tails on the sheep probably this weekend and vaccinate them so they don't get sick. So we give them tetanus and Clostridium vaccine, because tetanus is a common disease that when the sheep quit drinking milk from their mom, they don't have any immunity to it and they'll get sick. So we'll give them a shot just like any of us would have when we were young, going to the doctor to keep us from getting sick.
What is docking good to?
So if you look at the mom, she doesn't have a tail, and the babies do. The reason we do that is because the tail will get poop under it, and it'll attract flies, and it can just make the mother sick. We don't like having anything that'll make them get sick, because they're out in the grass and the hot weather and the sun, and the flies can really bother them, and we just need to make sure that they don't have anything that'll cause stress or possibly get them sick. So
how long does it take for the wool to grow?
the wool on these sheep has been growing for a year. So actually, and if you look at the rams again, that wool has been on there for 2 years. I didn't get those sheared last year because they went to pasture before the guy came to shear them. And the crossbred ram with the gray head, that's actually a wool breed. So they were grown just to grow wool. Wool is still fairly popular fiber that people make stuff out of. It's a little bit itchy if it isn't handled correctly, but it's still something that people use, and it's a lot cheaper than it used to be. About 50 years ago, the wool was more valuable than the lambs were, and that was before all of the synthetic fibers and the widespread cotton production that we have now.
Do you have a problem with predators?
We don't really have an issue with predators here. If you look around, we don't have a lot of trees in this area, and trees tend to attract coyotes and stuff like that. We do have dogs in the neighborhood that sometimes will get in. The perimeter fence of this farm has woven wire, and we can walk over there and see what woven wire is. It's fairly unique to sheep and goats because it's a lot smaller wire, and it'll keep the sheep and lambs from getting out and predators from getting in.
What do you say when you're calling your sheep to come?
I just say, "Here, sheep, I got the corn," and they like to eat corn, so they'll come running. Yeah, if you look that way, Morgan, you can probably see the woven wire fence.
And then how often can they be mean to people?
The sheep generally aren't mean to people unless they're provoked. So the mothers only get upset if you're messing with their baby lambs. But most of these don't bother me because I'm bigger than they are. The rams, on the other hand, they'll mess with you. They'll push you around, but they're not generally very aggressive animals. They're pretty tame. They're something that we like to have here because our kids are really young and they won't get hurt being in them. So.
And how many sheep do you have?
We have 23 mothers and 4 adults, and there's about 20 lambs here right now. We're still lambing.
Do you help the lambs both if they're having trouble?
Yeah, so once in a while we'll help the lambs come out of the moms if they're not able to come right out. Most of the time that only happens with the ewe lambs when they're having their first lambs ever. It's generally not a big deal, the birthing part with the breeds that I have. Some people are breeding their lambs to be very big, and it's just something that they expect to have some issues, but most of the time it's pretty easy. Sometimes when it's cold out, you'll have a lamb that's not able to get all the energy he needs to get up and suck and nurse on his mom. So we'll take either a bottle and try and feed him a bottle, or we'll actually stick a feeding tube down their throat and fill their tummy up with milk. And then usually once you do that, they're up and going, and then they're doing well. So.
What is the color of the mom's milk?
So their milk actually looks just like cow's milk. It's a little bit richer. It's probably halfway in between goat milk and cow's milk. It's still pretty much white. The first milk, or colostrum, is a darker yellow color. It's got some different fats and things in it that the lambs need right when they're born. All mammals have colostrum, the first milk they call it, and that's usually a darker color like a yellow or a tan color.
And how many sheep does an average sheep farmer have? You said you have 23. Is that typical?
This is what you consider a hobby flock. Some people just have a couple if they just like to have the wool to make clothing with. The person that is going to shear my sheep, he has 130, and I'd say 50 years ago most people had 200 to 300 ewes. So if you kind of look at it like they're 1/6 of a cow, or it takes 6 sheep to make 1 cow, usually having 100 of them isn't a real big deal. So someday I'd like to have 50 because that's the grass that I have for them to eat. I've just been building my flock up slowly, and putting up fence. And if we look out here, there's a hog confinement across the field. That's where I raise hogs. There's 7,500 hogs in that building, and there's a lot of lawn to mow around that hog building. And that's something I'm going to work on this summer, is putting fence around that so I don't have to mow as much lawn and have the sheep eat the grass. So they do a great job of eating grass. They don't tear the land up if it's hilly or wet, just because they're so much smaller and they're lighter on their feet.
How long are they, when they're born, how long does it take for them to walk and open their eyes?
Usually they'll be walking in just a couple of hours, and their eyes are open when they're born. They're not like a cat or a dog that keeps their eyes shut for days or weeks. It's right away, they're up and going and alert, and usually by the end of the day they're running around real well.
How old is a sheep when they first have a baby?
Usually they're about a year to a year and a half old when they have their first baby.
And how much milk does a baby need?
They'll drink, usually when they're first born, 8 ounces a day. When they get bigger, they could probably drink up to 24 ounces a day.
And they see some of the babies wagging their tails. Why do you think they wag their tails?
Usually when they're wagging their tails, it's because they're happy. And a lot of times when they're eating, they'll be wagging their tail. It's just something they do. Calves are the same way. Yep.
Do you have a sheepdog? And if you do they help guard the sheep?
Well, yeah, we do. We've got a dog. She's just a puppy. Her name's Polly, and she's a border collie. And she's not old enough to work with the big sheep yet, but I'll put her on a leash and walk her around and get her used to them. She's very eager to work with them, but if I take her off the leash, the big sheep kind of chase her around because she's just not big enough yet.
And when did you get your first lamb?
The first lamb this year came April 1st. I've been raising sheep for 7 years.
Okay, and then looking at the hay, what's the difference between hay and straw?
Okay, this is actually just grass, kind of like what you would have in your lawn. It's a little bit different species. This is mostly orchard grass, and this is made from our grass waterways. And a grass waterway is an area that we purposefully don't farm. There's places in the fields that are lower, and the water will run to them when it rains. And if you don't have grass there, or a really strong growing crop like hay or corn, the soil can wash away from the field. So we grow grass in our fields to have a place for the water to run and not take our soil away. And then 2 or 3 times a year we'll cut that grass and let it dry and then bale it up and feed it to the sheep. Straw comes from grain crops like oats, wheat, barley, rye, things that would produce grain for bread, cereal, or things of that nature. And the straw is very non-nutritious. It's not very nutritious compared to the grass. It's hollow. You can actually suck through straw just like a drinking straw, and it's very absorbent, so it works great to use as a bedding for the animals to lay on. So when they pee and poop, it just sucks it right up and it doesn't stay damp. The grass is a food. It's food and not bedding. So the animals will eat a little bit of straw, but it really doesn't have any nutrition for them.
And can you talk about why does the sheep need to eat hay and grass like the ruminant?
Yep. So sheep eat grass and clover and hay because they're a ruminant animal. And ruminant animals have 4 stomachs, and their stomachs actually do more than ours by they'll have bacteria in them that break down this grass into food that they can digest. So when they bring food in their mouth, they chew it up fairly well, and then it goes into their first stomach, and then the bacteria will start breaking that grass or hay down, and sometime during the day they'll actually cough it back up and chew on it some more. They call it chewing their cud. Like if you see a cow or a sheep sitting and chewing, look right now, there's one by that tractor and they're just chewing. So she just coughed up some of her hay that she ate earlier, and she's chewing on it. She looked away from us. But they'll chew their cud to help them. The one to the left's doing it now too. So they're chewing their cud to help break that down, and then they'll swallow it again, and then the bacteria will work on it some more. and they just keep doing that, eating and chewing their cud, and the bacteria in their stomach help break down this fibrous cellulosic material called hay, and they get all the nutrients they need out of it. They have to eat quite a bit of hay to get what they need to produce milk and have energy, but the way their stomachs are set up, they basically, that's all they really eat. When they get done milking with their lambs, that's all they'll eat is grass. So they'll have grass and drink water, and then they'll eat some vitamins too. We've got some vitamins that we'll put in their feed trough that it's mainly salt and some of the vitamins that would be in the vitamins that you would eat if you were to take a chewy vitamin or anything. And it just gives them all they need so their bones are strong and they don't get sick and they feel good.
How big are they when they born? How much do they weigh? What's your smallest lamb?
So lambs, they actually are very light. They probably weigh 5 to 10 pounds when they're born. Sometimes you can have lambs that are very tiny, and sometimes you can have lambs that are very big. It just kind of depends on the age of their mother and how many lambs they had. If you have a ewe that has 4 lambs, those lambs are probably going to be really small. Like that white one is a single, and he wasn't born that long ago. You can still see his navel hanging down in between his legs. So he was born about a week ago, and he's a lot bigger than the other lambs, but he was just a single, so he's going to be bigger.
Do you want to ask them if they have any more questions?
Do you have any more questions about farming in general or sheep?
And they can't hear me, so maybe if they type a question we can answer, but otherwise do you want to do a kind of a conclusion?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming with us to the farm today and seeing sheep and what they can do, and they're a great addition to the farm economy because they produce food, fuel, and they utilize grass and turn it into meat and do a great job of it. And we sure enjoy raising sheep here on our farm, and we'll probably be doing it for a long time.
Oh, they're asking, do you grow your own hay? So I'll respond to that if I can flip this. All right, and that last question, so there you have a couple questions on there. Do you farm other things besides lambs? That pig barn that we saw over the fence, that's also Jason. So he has pigs, and he also has, there's a turbulence here. I'll flip it back over. Wind turbine over there. I can zoom in. There's also some pigs over there, and also corn and soybeans, correct? And then we have a few dairy steers over here that were last year's buck bottle calves for showing, and we also have chickpeas on the farm. So lots going on here that keeps Jason busy, and we are happy to have him sharing his knowledge with us. And that last question, do you grow your own hay? Yes, Jason does grow his own hay for the sheep. And there is bales, here I'll flip back around, there is bales over here that are stored here from last year's hay crop. So we keep them in here so that they're out of the weather, but they have a net on them that helps keep the bale together so that it doesn't come apart. And then when you give it to the sheep, you put it in that ring that we saw, and that helps keep the hay so that it doesn't fall on the ground, so that when the sheep eat it, they can enjoy it without having to eat it off the ground. It kind of just helps keep it together. All right, so let me flip it back around. All right, so that is our farm chat for today. Hopefully you enjoyed learning a little bit about sheep and lambing and what they eat and the different process from the beginning, the stage of the life cycle towards the end of the life cycle. And so thank you for joining us today. If you do have any other questions, you can type those down below and I can answer those just in the comments. We appreciate you hopping on, and we'll talk to you later. And thank you, Jason, for joining us today. Bye.